Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the fight previews, recaps, and exclusive interviews that I know you're looking for. My name is Jake Aryeh, joined here by Scott Fontana, my esteemed co-host, and our other esteemed co-host, Eric Richter, will be back next week. I know we said he was going to be back this week, but he's out today.
We lied.
We lied, exactly. But Scott, listen, there's no beating around the bush. This past weekend, UFC 321 ended in disaster. Tom Aspinall, the champion, gets double eye poked by Ciryl Gane. We don't get any conclusion, no closure about that fight. We're kind of left in limbo. What was going through your head when you saw that happen in the main event?
I mean, it's awful, on so many levels, from let's say the lesser perspective of we don't get a result, we get a no contest. It's very unfulfilling. Everybody wants a result, right? Unfortunately, this is kind of just the way referees tend to handle this type of situation. Even in the case of a foul like this, we often get a no contest here because unless the referee can very much clearly say, hey, you weren't listening to my commands, you did something illegal or intentional, which, how do we ever really come up with that? You're not going to get them to do a whole lot more in this situation. They give a no contest. Very unsatisfying. And of course, we feel pain, we feel the pain of Tom Aspinall, too, who's obviously dealing with some really serious issues with his eye still.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's kind of left in limbo. This heavyweight division is kind of left in limbo. That same day, though, Mr. Alex Pereira, who has been calling for a heavyweight move, he tweeted something. He tweeted his reaction to the fight in a video, and in the caption of that, he said, "Let's make the heavyweight division great again," along with an Easter Island head emoji and a bone emoji and a house emoji. So I'll let you do the math on what that means. And then John Jones tweeted back, "Alex, I'd be down to bring the highest skill level to the White House. I appreciate the respect you showed. Let's dance." With this uncertainty at heavyweight, could we be seeing Alex Pereira and John Jones saving the heavyweight division? What do you think, Scott?
So, as far as the fact that it could save the heavyweight division, I don't know, and it kind of depends on the way that could even shake out in this hypothetical scenario where these two actually do throw down, right? You'd have to think that if Jones wins, this is a one-off fight. There's not really anything to be gained from it. So it's not going to help the health of the heavy division. But obviously it helps the UFC. It's a giant fight. It's a massive fight. So for them, they should be salivating at making this happen. Whether it's the White House, I don't know. I mean, Dana has been very extremely against the idea of John Jones fighting at the White House. He's unreliable, all this, all that. I don't know. And I wonder if that would be an impediment to this fight happening. Is John Jones so dead set against it being anywhere but the White House against Alex Pereira at this point? I don't know. You never know. How do you feel about this? I mean, do you feel like this is like the fight that saves it, or where do you feel, Mr. Jake?
So, yes, I see what you're saying, and I feel like we keep saying, like, there's a narrow path here. For John, I do agree with you in the sense that, like, there is a bit of a problem with that. He seems pretty dead set on it being at the White House, and if that's the case, like, that's over 6 months away. It's in June, right? That's a long time.
And as Dana has said, we're worrying about that in February. We're not starting to build that card till February.
Exactly. So, I mean, taking Tom out of the equation, and we obviously hope that he's able to fight as soon as possible. But let's just talk about John and Alex there. I don't know if he's taking this fight not at the White House, and if that's the case and we do have to wait that long, I don't know how much it does do for the heavyweight division. It's still more waiting around, which we've been kind of doing for a very long time at heavyweight, right?
Forever. Yeah.
So, yeah, it would be a great fight, though. I mean, it's grown on me.
No question.
Now, sorry?
I said no question.
Absolutely. And it's grown on me more. I mean, prior to the weekend, I would say, it's grown on me more because John is no longer the champion. There's no holdup. You could make those fun fights if you want now that he's not champion, right? But I guess let's talk.
It would hold up another belt, but there is that.
Yeah.
But also, you know what? I want to throw something out here
Mhm.
though, Jake, too. And not only this, but let's look at the other way. Let's say if John wins this, it's a one-off. I think that's how we look at it. He has no interest in fighting Tom Aspinall. Even though he could certainly just poke him in the eye and make his money too, which I saw someone else had floated on social media, and that certainly has happened to John Jones before, poke him in the
Sure.
eye, right? Um, but let's go the other way. Let's do the hypothetical. Let's get egregiously ahead of ourselves here. Let's say Alex Pereira wins the fight
Mhm.
against John Jones. Then let's say he fights for the heavyweight title and he wins that heavyweight title. I mean, that is the birth of an incredible run of the heavyweight title in the heavyweight division, because not only do you have the easily the biggest star above what, lightweight? The biggest star above lightweight would be your heavyweight champion now, a three division historic heavyweight champion. But he would already have all of these brand new fights and nobody in the way. We don't have any friends that we don't want to fight. He's not fought anybody else except for, in this scenario, probably it would be John Jones and Tom Aspinall, or potentially a Ciryl Gane, right? That's it. Everything else is wide open. It makes it so fascinating. So there's potential for it to down the road be kind of the thing that sets off the heavyweight division to a giant, mega attraction for the UFC. But that's pretty far down the line, and a lot of ifs and ands and all that.
I 100%, but it is probably one of the more fun things you could do is,
It's fun to
speculate
think
and
about.
get
Yeah.
ahead of ourselves. And Pereira
Yeah.
as a heavyweight champion would be so entertaining because, I mean, let's be real here. Heavyweights aren't necessarily known for their, scrambles and grappling exchanges. It's a lot of standing on the feet. And I mean, while we've
Unless
seen,
you're Dalton Almeida.
unless you're Jelton Almeida, right? We'll
We'll
talk.
get to that later.
We'll get to that later. But Alex already has fought someone on like Magomed Ankalaev, who he's touted as a Dagestani wrestler. He was able to fend off those takedowns in their first fight. So I feel like it would be a fun time seeing him as champion, watching him stand and bang with those other heavyweights. And I mean, he has no trouble getting knockouts already. Imagine what it's like at heavyweight. So that'd be very, very entertaining. What do you think?
Well, I mean, does the power carry? That's the only question I have off of that. But
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, he's got power. Like, obviously, he has amazing power, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to be like, whoa, we're underestimating Poatan's power. No, absolutely not. But because it is heavyweight, these guys can,
You
obviously
can take a
there's a
bigger
little bit
punch
of
when you're
extra power up at
260
there.
pounds.
In
Yeah.
theory, you can, but also probably not. I mean, the guy hits like a truck. I think he'll be all right.
He has devastation in his hands. But yeah, we'll see what
And
happens
so,
there. I guess the first thing that we kind of have to figure out, though, is what is going on with Tom Aspinall. And we received a not great update from his father, Andy Aspinall, on Tom's YouTube channel. Andy gave a update about Tom's eyes. So let's hear what Andy had to say.
It's bad. It's not good. But his eye is a little bit more closed than it was. His right eye he still can't see anything. He said it's just grey. And they tested him on words and he just couldn't see anything. His left eye, 50%, he went down about 4 letters and then couldn't see the letters. So one's really blurry and one's still not working.
So, not good stuff. It's not the news that either of us or anyone wanted to hear, for that matter. How worried after hearing that update from his father, Andy? How worried do you think we should be about the future of Tom?
I don't want to get too doom and gloom, right? Because there's still a lot we don't know. We have an update from 3 days out is kind of a long time. I'm not an expert on the eye, right? And eye injuries. I've not spoken to a doctor. I didn't get the chance to kind of get word on kind of what we should be expecting this far out from such an injury, right? For context. But having said that, this is not great. I mean, you don't you don't want to hear that. And frankly, if he can't see very well and if he's not interested in fighting, heavily compromised, if that is what comes of this, someone like a Michael Bisping obviously literally fought with one of his eyes gone. That was insane that it even happened and that commissions allowed it to happen. And probably you'd have to think some commissions will have put things in place to avoid stuff like that in the future, especially when we now have a very documented and public eye injury. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to skirt that, right? Not that we know what he would do in that scenario, but the point is, um, it's really, really rough, and we really need to be kind of hoping not only for Tom's fight career, but out of the cage too. I mean, the man's a father, and he's obviously still a promising young man and young athlete. So you'd hate to see his career be affected negatively by this long term, and realistically, there's going to be some long term fallout from this. You'd have to think. Hopefully, it's not enough that it hinders his ability to be that prime athlete that we know him to be.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm a little nervous. I am.
100% me as well. And like you mentioned, I am also not an eye doctor. I feel like once we
Notably.
start once we start getting like honestly past like a week and maybe 2 weeks, if things are like not looking better, again, not an eye doctor, I'm getting very, very, very worried. Like I'm not
Sure.
not over the moon right now with how it's going in terms of that update. Um, and you've heard a lot of people, like you mentioned, there could be long-term effects to this. We've heard a lot of people talk about the situation. It's all anyone's been talking about for the past few days. Jim Miller, our old friend, he went on Helwani and he was talking about, as well as his own social media, he was talking about the stuff that he's experienced from his own eye poke injuries, little things. He said he couldn't like quite properly aim his bow anymore and stuff like that. And you don't want to see that either for anyone. Just like things affecting their daily life, it's really quite horrible. But yeah, just,
Injuries, like I think these fighters know that there's a certain level of risk in the career that they have chosen, right? I think they know that their backs, their joints, their knees, all of these things could have major issues as they get older. But the eyes are supposed to be off limits, right? That's supposed to be protected by the rules.
mhm.
And when that's where the issue comes in, it's like, okay, now this is beyond what you really should have signed up for.
100%. So I will ask you this in terms of in cage problems, because there's a lot of problems outside the cage that we have talked about and will continue to talk about: weight cutting, fighter pay, what have you, right? Let's talk about the in cage stuff. Do you think that eye pokes are currently the biggest in cage problem in mixed martial arts?
I I would say pretty much yes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, eye pokes, extended fingers, they're two fouls with the most need for better policing, more regular and enforced policing by the referees in the cages here. It's industry wide, right? The aversion for officials to inject themselves into these fights. They don't want to do that. They don't want to take a point because of how much a point deduction, even just one in a 3 round fight, it puts the offending fighter at a disadvantage if it gets the scorecards. But frankly, what always gets overlooked when I've heard that from either officials speaking on it in broad terms or from people in general who will talk about that kind of thing, they're always negating the fact that the other side, the fighter who got fouled, not only are they going to be damaged by one of the most important to one of the most important things that they have in a fight, their eyes. Um, they don't even have any sort of like repercussion. There's no balancing act. They just have to deal with it. And frankly, then you get everybody outside the cage. If they don't want to deal with it in a way that people are satisfied, then they face blowback, and it's ridiculous. Like I think when we have something like this injury, you have to treat it more seriously. Like if they don't want to take a point for every groin strike or every cage grab, I get it. But I think we really need to start getting to a point where officials are very strenuously taking away points for eye pokes. Jim Miller nailed it, right? Like we were at his house a year and a half ago when we did that story on him ahead of UFC 300. We did that video. We followed him around for a day. And this wasn't in the video, but he was telling us exactly the same thing that he's been talking about on social media really ever since then about the eye pokes, that you gotta take points.
Find
You've
the
got to
fighters.
do find the fighters. It was his big one too. That one's going to take a lot more work to get done because
I
I
agree.
imagine they're going to need legislative work and that kind of thing to be able to get to that point. I don't think that a commission can just step in and do that, if I'm not mistaken. That's my understanding. But the referees, they can do that right now. In fact, the fact that they're not goes against, in theory, what we're supposed to be having them there for, which is to enforce the rules.
100%. And I think where I stand on this is because you've been hearing a lot of people talk about what is to be done. Should it just be an automatic DQ if the person can't continue the fight? Because there's been a lot of kerfuffle on whether or not the ref made the right call, being a no contest. This discussion of intentional and unintentional, and let's definitely talk about that. But for me, I think one thing that I see as a potential solution is you'll hear refs warning fighters, and this is a good thing, of course, when they are, gauging distance and they're extending their fingers like that. I think it's good that they, give them warnings, but honestly, I'd like to see points taken away from that. Like, that's not something you see. I know it's not a foul because they haven't fouled them yet.
It is a foul. No, it is a
Oh,
foul
okay, all
because
right.
it is listed as something you can't do. They changed that in I forget how long ago at this point, but yes, it's actually a foul. If
So
you
then,
extend your fingers like this, as I'm doing to the camera right now, watch out.
that's what some people
Yeah,
see as
that's
fighters.
a foul. Yeah, watch out. Look.
So
Oh my
I think
goodness.
that that's a solution right there. And if you
I'm with you.
I think that would help, because it is a habit for people. Like, people have been saying this all week. Fighters, Demetrius Johnson, on his channel, probably most notably, is talking about, like, with techniques. Like, it's a habit that fighters have, and I understand that, but you could break habits, right? And I think that that's one
We
way that
have
you
to
could.
break this
Yeah,
habit. We
absolutely.
have to break this habit, Jake. You can't have this anymore. Just sorry, bad habit. You can't see anymore. Like that's not okay.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I like the idea of taking points of that. Here's how I would do it. I say anytime you have an eye poke, 2 points gone. Two immediately. 2 points gone. I don't care if it's a 3 round fight. You start doing that, I think people will do exactly what Jim was saying. They're going to stop having these fouls, and people are going to understand. I cannot do this. I absolutely cannot do this because there are fighters who don't do it. Jim was even saying, like, listen, if you look at all the guys with the most fights, most cage time, and I can't fact check him on that, but in my mind, it actually sounds accurate enough. The guys who have the most cage time don't have a lot of eye pokes that I can really remember. They're not known for it. And in theory, accumulation of knowledge would say, hey, we would know, gosh, Jim Miller, he pokes people in the eye a lot. Well, no, he's had 50 fights and he's done it like 7 times in 50 fights. That's not even the case, I don't think. So I'd say 2 points for an eye poke. I would say I think that you can warn a fighter for the extended fingers because no harm, no foul yet, right? I'm okay with that 1 time. Once they do it again after a warning in the cage, which again follows what you get in the back, they still know the rule.
Hmm.
Everyone knows the rule. Once you warn them the 1 time, they do it again, take a point. That is what it is. You can't do it. It'll teach them not to. And frankly, from if you're the type of person who's like, man, I really want these fights to be finishes. You know what's going to make someone want to finish? If they know they can't win on the cards.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah. Watch what you saw what happened with Drew Dober. He got a point taken for a low blow, and immediately he just got like he went into like Hulk mode. He was like Hulk smash. He got angry. And he just finished the fight
It's
like
a good
30
example.
seconds later. It was crazy. And not every fighter's gonna do that, and that's not why you do it. But I think that would be a nice little hey, that's a benefit. Now we get that too. I think that's how you do it. You take the 2 points for a poke, you do the warning, and then a foul, one point foul for extended fingers. And really quickly, I think that'll go away. I don't even think you need the fines. If you could do it, I'm cool with it, but I don't think you need them.
Yeah, I agree. And so I want to ask you about Saturday specifically. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that when that fight finished and it ended in a no contest, we were talking and you said that that was the right call. Have you changed your mind, or do you still believe that a no contest was the right way to go for the referee?
So it's not necessarily that it was the right call, but this is just the way they do it.
Right.
It's literally the way things are. And I'm not saying it's right,
Hmm.
but that is what they have done.
Yeah.
In situations like this, unless again, kind of like I said earlier in the show, if they're warning them, hey, don't do that, don't do that, and then they keep doing it, and then you got to stop
Right.
it
Yeah.
for it, and that's it. That's often where we see the DQ come in. We did have a disqualification in the Piotr Jan fight against Aljamain Sterling, who weirdly enough was a little critical of this kind of. He's walked it back a little bit too, but he had some very strange, peculiar comments directed at Tom Aspinall and that kind of thing. And I was like, well, why would you do
I
that?
was
You know
puzzled.
what
Yeah.
you suffer from. That was very strange. I thought it was a little weird. I do think he's thought about that. Not the point. To get back to it here, yes, there was a DQ in that scenario, and no, it wasn't like a repeated warning thing. I believe he was kind of told like don't do it from there or something like that, but then he threw the knee. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, and I'm not, but um, I'm cool with DQ there. I think I am, but I don't think it's not like we need a result. It's not so much that like someone needs to suffer for this, right? Um, but I don't know. When do they start doing that? When do they start taking points and doing all that stuff? I don't know. Um,
I
Especially in
understand
a
what you're
scenario,
saying.
yes, where he was winning the fight, right? It's very tricky.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not
yeah.
necessarily like a because like you mentioned, it's already a foul to keep extending your fingers. It's not necessarily a changing of the rules. It's a changing in how referees are applying the rules, right?
I think that again, it comes down to referees really don't like to inject themselves if they can avoid to. They want the fighters to settle things, and that's admirable in some ways, but also, sometimes you just have to do it.
Hmm.
If the protocol was in a situation like this where somebody cannot continue because a foul, whether it was intentional or not, which you're never going to really assess.
Yeah.
Does anyone sit there and really think Ciryl Gane was trying to poke him in the eye? No. I don't think so. He's not a nefarious person. I'm sure he wasn't trying to do that because, frankly, it only cost him at the end of the day. Well, it cost Tom Aspinall too, but
You
it
could
cost
make an
cost
argument.
him an
Yeah,
opportunity. Cost him an opportunity because he was
sure.
doing well. Um, Neither here nor there. I'm okay with them switching to making it DQ, but you just kind of have to start doing that more when we have negative fouls like this.
100%. Yeah, like you said, Cyril's not. It was not intentional, but it was. You should penalize fighters
Probably.
for being. You should penalize fighters for being reckless. If you're reckless, which it is,
Hmm.
it is a bad habit. Like we said, habits can be broken. And that's not. It doesn't justify it. It's reckless.
Reckless is a great word for it. I think that's something that should be thrown around a little bit more. If you're recklessly fouling, that's where the problem comes in, right? You're not in control of your weapons, which you have to be.
Hmm.
And it's not about intent or malintent, right? It's about your control versus how reckless you are. And if you are reckless with those fingers, you deserve to be punished for it. And if that means a disqualification, I could accept that, but we got to start doing it and we got to do it regularly.
Yeah, and I think this is a good transition into my next question. This is sort of what I was alluding to when you and I were talking on Saturday. We've seen a lot more fights get not DQ'd. Sorry, DQ rather than no contest when it is a knee to the head. You mentioned the one with Aljamain Sterling and Piotr Jan. One that I immediately think of, which is one of the first big fights that I watched, was Anthony Smith and John Jones. Although it didn't happen, he knew that if he said he could not continue that fight, he was going to become the champion from that. And it is
Didn't want it that way.
did
Probably
not
a
want it
terrible
that
decision
way.
for his family, but a great decision as a fighter that we like respect and that kind of
Yes,
thing.
very respectable, but I want to clarify the distinction. Does this have to do with intentional and not intentional simply because like you can't say that like when someone needs someone in the head that it was unintentional? What's the distinction there on why so many, because they're both fouls, right? And you see that a lot less with groin strikes and with eye pokes, and you see them way more often with knees to the head. The fighter who committed the foul being DQ'd. Is that an intent thing, or how does this work? If you could enlighten
You,
me.
you know what? That's one of those things that unfortunately is probably going to be referee to referee.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a distinct broad answer for that. I think there's a very broad answer for some of the things that I am talking about. The fact that they generally do not want to take points. That is
one
true of
hundred
just
percent,
about every
100%.
official. But as far as the knees and that kind of thing, whether they're punishing and that kind of thing, I think if I was to surmise anything, I think it would probably just be like, look, we're throwing a strike that is illegal. It takes a lot to throw a knee. And they're very devastating to the fight in a way that you can see much more easily than you can even an eye poke,
Hmm.
frankly. So I think there's probably just aesthetics that play into it stupidly. That's how I kind of feel.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, an eye poke also does look way more accidental than a knee to the head. Like you said, it takes quite a bit of effort to throw a knee to someone.
You still got to accurately get it there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's true. That's true. John Jones knows something
Yeah.
too about that. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Just the logistics of eye pokes and what you would like to see changed, or do you think you've gotten it all off your chest?
Man, I think I said everything except for one thing here is the fact that it is gross to me just how much of the blowback has gone toward Tom Aspinall on this and the way he reacted, or maybe didn't want to fight, or was looking for a way out. There, TJ Gillisaw of all people, who's famous for as probably as famous for popping for Ipo as he is for a two-time bantamweight champion, saying that he took the easier way out, right? Like, this is ridiculous. I think, at least, again, we mentioned Aljamain Sterling. I think he kind of understood, okay, maybe I went a little too far. I wasn't expressing myself in the way I wanted to, or maybe I shouldn't have said what I said. I don't know what it was, but uh, it's ludicrous to me that that is the direction it goes in. Um, Whereas we have someone like, again, not again, but specifically Matt Brown, UFC veteran. He is like always the voice of reason
He is.
nowadays. He came to Tom Aspinall's defense. I mean, pretty much everything Matt Brown says when it comes to the in cage stuff, it makes a lot of sense to me. So hats off to the immortal one. And the other thing too, I mean, I don't want to demonize Ciryl Gane, right? Because I don't think he was trying to hurt Tom Aspinall in this particular way. I think he wanted to jab him in the face. I think he was happy to do that and kick him in the legs. And hey, that's great. But I don't think he deserves to be demonized. But frankly, if there's any position who should be facing backlash from this, it's the man in Ciryl Gane's shoes and not the one in Tom Aspinall's shoes. When situations like this happen, that's how it should be, and it's backwards.
Yeah, 100%, and I completely agree with you on all that in terms of the blowback. It's insane how some people are like, he took the easy way out, and like he could have, even the assessment that he could have continued fighting, with people citing, like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, Bisping did it. Can you imagine? First off, Bisping, that happened. He had a lot of time. And it's insane that he did it in the first place. He had a lot of
And
time
it wasn't
to.
an eye poke.
Yeah, it wasn't
It
an
was
eye
not
poke.
an
It was
eye
a head
poke.
kick, right? But let's just
Yes.
for devil's advocate or what have you. He had a lot of time to let that settle in that he had one eye. It wasn't you have one eye in the middle of a fight, go do it again. Tom is a he's at the top of the level in the sport as an MMA fighter. He's pretty mentally tough. He was in a state of panic, as anyone would be, when not only
Can't
one eye
see.
but both of your eyes are completely screwed.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
insane.
Both eyes.
Some people just
Just
don't.
ludicrous, yeah.
Yeah, they can't put themselves in someone else's shoes in that sort of scenario. It's absolutely.
Empathy's become a dirty word these days, and it kind of bothers me, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but I'm glad we got that off our chest talking about all this eye poke stuff. Let's talk about the actual fight itself, which, albeit as short-lived as it was, let's see what we could take away from it. And let's talk about Ciryl Gane. He, I feel like, shut a lot of people up, or at least he did a lot better than people were expecting in that first round. What did you think, Scott? As short as it was, what did we learn about him? Did we underestimate him?
We definitely underestimated him, I think, as a collective, you know. Look, he worked his game plan to perfection. I saw a very narrow path for him to kind of win. I really think he needed to do exactly what he was doing,
Mm-hmm.
more or less. And that's, I mean, he had no real trouble, at least in those first couple minutes, executing that. We don't know what the fight looks like as it goes forward, but Tom Aspinall, as much as he was able to land, he was finding a home for his offense here and there as well, but he was not winning that fight, not for the first couple minutes. And again, we still don't know what a later round Tom Aspinall looks like. So would he have made those adjustments? Maybe. I don't know. But as far as Ciryl Gane, man, he looked great. I mean, again, the jab is a serious weapon in MMA, especially at heavyweight, and it was working to perfection with him, keeping Tom Aspinall at bay. And I think we were reminded just how much of a standout Gane is when the fight goes like this, which it often does when he wins, right? Frankly, I could see him having this similar success in the rematch. I'm sure Tom will make some adjustments, and Gane will have to make some adjustments as well. As part of his hand was tipped, right? He doesn't have a result, but his hand was tipped a little bit. Again, I think we knew he fought like this, and it just worked really well. So there's a lot more questions now about Tom Aspinall, even aside of the eye injury and all of that, right? There are more questions about Tom Aspinall going into the next time these two fight, which we certainly hope will happen, than there are about Gane. It's changed.
100%. And one thing that I do want to bring up, though, is like I was saying in our last episode, I feel like Tom's clear path to victory was going to the grappling. The one thing is, like, that's like stuck in my mind from that first round is like the takedown attempt, and I'm sure you've heard people talk about this as an apparent eye poke. I don't know if it actually did go into the eye because, you know, we didn't see much of a reaction from Tom, or at least it wasn't stopped in the action. It wasn't obvious in the moment. It
I
was
don't know.
really
He's
just,
looking for a way out, probably though.
yeah, exactly. Come on, man. Ridiculous, some people. But yeah, I'm not sure if it was an eye poke or not. It did seem like it wasn't like a fully committed one, you know, following through with it. So I'm not terribly sure, but we'll put in a little asterisk on that. In terms of the striking and on the feet, yeah, Ciryl Gane looked fantastic. And we'll, like you said, we don't know what a later round Tom Aspinall looks like, but he's got some amazing people in his corner, and has been doing for the past 15 months has been training striking. So we'll see if there's things that you know he didn't expect to implement to his game plan, or about Cyryl's game plan. It's very interesting, and I wholeheartedly agree. There's more questions about Tom than there are about Ciryl. So very, very excited about that one. Is there anything about Tom that you think that we learned about that in this fight, or mostly just about Ciryl and you know how he kind of outperformed what people were going to think?
No, I mean, I'm sure we learned a little bit here, and certainly both camps will have some data to download here. I think we just didn't, I think we learned a little bit here that, hey, this style is a little bit of a problem for Tom. He's got to figure out a way to get inside, that he's not good on the outside against this particular opponent, from the limited amount we saw. So my thoughts would be he's got to figure out the better way to get inside because what he was doing wasn't quite working. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to take too much away as just an observer. I haven't broken down film or anything.
Yeah,
So.
it is interesting though, because this is something we were talking about last week. Just to round out this fight, it was like there's two sides of this coin of Ciryl Gane. It's like either his deficiency in the grappling is going to be what we're seeing, or it's going to be his ability to take the fight longer, that sort of seems like the game plan that he implemented, and it was working out well. And that's not the one that people were expecting to happen. So that was very, very interesting to see. Anything that you have left on Ciryl and Tom before
I think we
move
got to
on?
move on, Jake.
Yeah, let's move on. Alrighty. Let's keep it with the heavyweights. We got Volkov and Almeida, and this one was a very interesting one for me as a person who's trying to get better with the judging. Right. I watched this one, and full disclosure, I was not watching it from a judging mindset. So when the judges read out that Volkov had won this fight, I was like, wait, what? Sorry, that didn't seem like
Got that from the text you sent me, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I was like, Scott, did you watch
Help
that
me
fight?
understand.
Help me. What happened here? And you're like, well, tell me what you said.
I don't remember exactly what I said to you, but let me tell you this. I'll tell you why this was the right call. Why Alexander Volkov won this fight. Effective striking and grappling they're always what have won. When I say always, I guess I mean in the last 8-9 years or so, ever since they did reconfiguration of the scoring wording criteria 9 years ago, right? In that time, this has been the thing. Effective striking and grappling. It's very rare that we get a fight like this that comes along where you get this fighter who gets on top and they do so little effectively with that top position that they still could not earn two judges for that round, right? The only fight that I can think of that comes to mind in that time, there's probably a more, but this is the main one that I think of, is Yana Santos beat Ketlin Vieira. I think it was about 5 years ago, and there was kind of similar circumstances. It was round three, just like Volkov and Almeida here, and Vieira did so little with her top position, whereas in the last 30 seconds, Santos was able to land some pretty good offense, and that was how she got the job done. She was able to get 2 out of the 3 scores on that one. And at the end of the day, though, Almeida just can't be an anti-fighter, which is what he was doing in this fight. There were so many times he's just hanging on, or he's just sitting on top, and he's not throwing things. If you just land 2 or 3 bombs from the top, he might win that fight. That's it. That's probably all he needed to do, and he still didn't do it. He just didn't try. We need to be thankful, by the way, that he didn't win this fight,
Yeah.
because can you just imagine he gets a title shot off of this fight, and it's just there's no fighting going on. He goes, his style needs to include more violence from aesthetics and frankly from a competitive standpoint. He can't win a fight like this. We now saw it.
Yeah, damage keyword in the judging criteria, and it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of that coming from Jelton Almeida. So, like you said, they got it right, and we should be very thankful that the judges did get it right because there's a lot of kerfuffle with judges in scoring in MMA, and it's nice to see that even with a one that would be tricky.
Judges know this though.
Yeah,
There's judges input in making the scoring like the
100%.
wording as it is, and they're trained to know that yes, we still need to be landing effectively or completing effective grappling, attacks and that kind of thing. And that just isn't what was happening. And I think we have enough judges who've been around the sport for a very long time and have been working very hard over the last bunch of years to get on the same page that they understand that. Obviously, it was a split decision. Still had one judge going the other way, but yeah,
Yeah,
it generally speaking, I think we're seeing more of that.
right, right. Alrighty, so I think that covers the heavyweights. Also, by the way, I believe that you had a stat about how many heavyweight fights were on this card and how much impact it had on the heavyweight division. What's the deal with that?
So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but 1/4 of the UFC heavyweight roster was in action in Abu Dhabi the other day. They don't have a giant heavyweight roster. We had 4 heavyweight fights going on. You do the math. That's 8 out of 32. That's a quarter. Obviously, we're not counting Alex Pereira because he's at 205. We're not counting John Jones. He is retired. Um, but yeah, we had quite a few in action this time. This is what our heavyweight division looks like, guys. That's what we need to save, unfortunately. And then this main event, as much as we hoped it would, and Eric seemed to believe that we were going to get not a good fight here, and he knew. He was the one who knew.
He
He was the
saw the
truther.
future. But let's move on to the strawweight title, which we did get some closure on, and we did get a final result. Mackenzie Dern winning the strawweight title over however many UFC fights that she's had over an illustrious career. Veteran of the sport. At this point, she finally gets to that gold. What do you? And by the way, probably who the UFC wanted to get that by. All
Over Virna
assumptions
Jandiroba, yes.
over Virna Jandiroba. What do you think that Mackenzie Dern's era at strawweight looks like?
I think it looks wide open. I think competitively speaking, we're looking at an era where now there's quite a few names we could see kind of rising to the top. And that's not because Mackenzie Dern isn't a fantastic fighter. She is a champion for a reason. She was there at the body who beat the number one, probably the number one contender realistically, was Virna Jandiroba. So getting the
Absolutely.
win over her, you beat the woman, you become the woman, right? But having said that, I still stand by what I said last week. I think she is going to need to beat Tatiana Suarez to put a real stamp and be that true number one now that Zhang Weili is heading up in weight. But otherwise, I mean, there's a few women I could see kind of getting to the top and maybe winning that title. I mean, there's Yan Xiaonan, there's Amanda Lemos. Even further down, I could see somebody like Tabitha Ricci going on a run and that kind of thing. And honestly, the division, there's no way to go in confidently to the next year and say, yes, Mackenzie Dern is going to have this belt for 12 months from now. I don't think we can say that with confidence. It can happen, absolutely. But I also think too, let's another underestimated part of this is Mackenzie Dern is a fun fighter to watch. This was a
Yes,
pretty solid scrap. I
it
think we had a
was.
good time watching it. It wasn't like fight of the night where we're like, man, that was wild, but it was fun. We
Hmm.
were engaged, I think, the whole time. She throws with intention. She takes damage and keeps going. She doesn't fade. She's obviously an incredible grappler who has the chance to put anybody in danger. And even Rina Jejidoba, she took it down a bunch of times, but it's not like she really engaged with her very much down there. She was not in control of those grappling scenarios down there by a whole lot. So, and that's probably one of the best people down there. Maybe Tatiana Suarez as well, being a strong wrestler with a good base up top. You never know. But other than that, yeah, I think she's the type of violence fighter that this division actually needs to make it interesting. So if she goes on a good run, maybe we're talking about a reinvigorated 115.
Yeah, I love it. I think that we I was impressed. I was impressed by Mackenzie Dern in this fight. I mean, I think that I would have said beforehand that I favored her, but I just feel like she had a really good performance over a contender like Virna, and I definitely like those shouts about those other contenders.
I would say impressed but not surprised for Mackenzie Dern. I
Yes.
think I totally saw a path for this to be a solid fight. That's why I gave it a 3 on the entertainment rating. I think I did, right? Or is it 2? Maybe I gave it a 2. I don't know. I didn't see it as doom and gloom. I thought we had something.
Yes, yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. But let's talk about the bantamweights on that main card. Umar Nurmagomedov and Mario Bautista. Umar coming away with the win. Not just a win, though. 30-27 sweep on the scorecards. That was another pretty fun fight, in my opinion. But what do you think he gained from that fight, going to a decision with Mario, albeit a dominant one on the scorecards, you could say?
On the scorecards is the key here
Yeah.
because you watched that fight.
Yeah,
And
it
so
was
did
great.
I, and so did most of these people listening. And frankly, the 30-27 was the right score. But it also isn't quite representative if you just say, oh, he 30-27 with all three judges. That
Yeah.
doesn't say, oh, he dominated him. Every round he had to fight for.
Yes.
And frankly, the best shot of the round, of the entire fight, was when Mario Bautista dropped him very briefly, but Umar immediately was back at it. So
I
how
want to
badly
say
was
he
he hurt?
dropped
I
him
don't know, but he
twice,
got
right?
caught a bit. Was it twice?
I
I
think
mean,
he
there was
might have.
definitely that one.
I could be
There
wrong.
was that one
I
at
may-
least where he dropped him
Yeah.
and immediately goes after him, right? He just keeps going because he is a fighter through and through. He just knew how to fight through it. He did a really great job there, and recovered very well. But yeah, so he had to earn it. So frankly, as far as what Umar gets out of this, I think it keeps him fresh in that contender mix for certain. Gets him potentially on track for another crack at a champion in Merab Dvalishvili, who is already in that rerun phase, right? He's got a rematch against
Yeah.
Petr Yan in December after dominating him the first time they fought a couple years back. Umar is certainly back in that mix. I think we did get reminded of how vulnerable he can be. You know, if he gets caught with the right shots, this is not like he is not Khabib. And Khabib even took some punishment at times, but he knew how to fight through it as well, similarly. But I think it all it does is keeps him fresh. I hope that they get him one more fight between them, though. I don't want this to be the one that gets him a title shot. I would love to see. I think you'll like this. Umar Nurmagomedov against Song Yadong. The winner of that one, no brainer to fight Merab for the title if he still has it.
I like it. I don't think that you could do anything else if you did want to give Merab one more fight, so that's why I like it. I just feel like, I mean,
No, you can do something else with Merab because you can have your flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja should he emerge unscathed against Joshua Van. You've got a super fight that frankly Merab is interested in. I think you can make Alexandre Pantoja interested enough in it. He's sort of not interested. He kind of wants to do the same thing Merab does. He wants to dominate his own weight class, and I respect that. But I think at a certain point, he might start saying to himself too, "Is like, you know what? This is a good fight. Maybe we should just do this. Let's just see how we do."
I like it.
So I think you can do it. I think you can do it.
I like it. I would say if no Pantoja, then I would argue put Umar in. But if Pantoja's down for it, make the Song fight. I like that a lot.
I don't want Song Yadong to get skipped over too much. I think he's got some good momentum, and I think we don't need to keep rerunning. And I want to see how he does against someone like Umar. I think that's a really intriguing matchup.
It is. It definitely is. But let's get to this weekend's card, UFC Fight Night, taking place in the Warehouse, the Apex. We got Steve Garcia taking on David Onama. We'll get to the event rating in a little bit, but as far as it, just looking at the card, who do you think this one is for? We don't have like big headline names in the headliner, right? So who's this card for, Scott?
This is for the diehards who just do not care what name is on top of the is on the poster next to those three capital letters, right? We're just if you just want to watch people fight and you're a UFC bro or a UFC fan or whatever, and you're in for a penny, in for a pound every time the UFC puts on programming. This is for you. And it may sound like an insult, but frankly, I just don't see how there's a lot of people who are going to take time out of their Saturday, other than that particular group, to watch this card because there is zero Q score for Steve Garcia and David Onama. I'm not saying they're not fun. This will be a fun fight. I think it's extremely fun fight. They're going to be rewarded if they tune in, but who's this for? It is for you who cannot do anything but watch UFC every Saturday.
And if you are one of those people, the prelims start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The main card starts at 7 p.m. And all those fights are on ESPN+. And Scott, I 100% agree.
Not much longer. We're getting near the end of that.
I'm counting down the days. Wallet is going to... It's going to put a little less pressure on the wallet, which is nice. But let's talk about some of these other fights to watch. And like I said, we'll get to the event rating in a second. We could see how much that holds up in terms of the diehards. Scott, what do you got for your fight to watch?
I'm gonna go with the co-main here. Waldo Cortez Acosta against Ante Delia. Uh, Delia is obviously a very intriguing figure because of his involvement and friendship with. When I say involvement, he trains with
Yes.
and he is friends with Tom Aspinall. Let's get that very clear. Um, I think it's really intriguing here because if Delia wins this, then he really starts to look like he's potentially a next man up or close to it. And that's just a whole nother wrinkle on this whole Tom Aspinall unfortunate situation here, because Tom, as we know, has said if it looked like he would be standing in the way of Ante Delia potentially winning the championship, he would abdicate, he would move away, he would give up the belt. God, I don't know, what a mess. But it's interesting. I'm intrigued to see how he does against Cortez Acosta, who has, he's performed pretty well in the cage. He's got some good results. He's in that top 6 or 7 range for a reason. But also, I've not looked at him yet as a true title threat. Maybe I start needing to after this fight. We'll see. So there's some intrigue here on both sides, I think.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. And for Eric, in his absence, I will give you his fight. Themba Gorimbo versus Jeremiah Wells. Themba Gorimbo, from Zimbabwe, like my mom, so I always like to see him fight. Got some national pride there. But
Sure.
for my fight, we got Alan Nascimento and Cody Durden. And this one's a flyweight fight, so I feel like I don't need to sell it too much because, like, we look at heavyweight fights maybe in a certain aspect. I feel like flyweights are the polar opposite.
They are. It's the
Nascimento,
technique, man. They got the best technique down there.
they
They
got the
move fast.
cardio,
Yeah.
they have the pace. Cody Durden on a little bit of a skid. He's 1 for 5 in his last 5, 1 win, 4 losses, but 4 out of those have been by finish. So for flyweights, you don't see it. Decisions may be a little bit more likely because they don't have so much of the power. But if this one's by finish, could be fun. I feel like this could be a fun one. So that's my fight to watch. Scott, what do you got for
Okay.
the event rating?
I don't know if this is going to surprise people or not because again, it's not the sexiest names up at the top, but we've got a 38. This is a really strong. This might actually be, if I'm not mistaken, it might be the strongest event rating for an Apex card
Wow.
this year and potentially even for the last couple of years. I'd have to double check. It's look not the snazziest main event in terms of ranking, right? I think there's a lot of reasons why we would enjoy watching it, but ranking wise, they're both outside the top 10. We're not really looking at something that's distinct. When I'm referring to rankings, I'm talking about Fight Matrix here. I don't care what the UFC's rankings are in this particular aspect. But
Fair.
solid co-main, like I said, way down card. We have a very impactful women's bantamweight fight. Ketlin Vieira, mentioned her earlier. She's fighting Norma Dumont, and the winner of that one realistically looks like they're on deck for whoever comes out of Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. Whenever that happens, White House card, I would guess. 18 out of 26 fighters on this card this weekend, Jake. They're in the top 100. So most of these fights feel like they're what we ought to think of as UFC caliber. Even if there's not a whole, there's no star power. It's not even there's a whole lot. There is an absence of star power, but it's still a cool card. And I think those diehards, they're going to have fun. I think it's worth it.
All right, all right, all right. I love it. I will be watching as a diehard.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No casuals.
No casuals here. Eric is not with us, so we will not be having any free bets in 3 minutes. Call it a cleanse, if you will. He'll be back next week, and he'll have some bets for you guys if that's your thing. But
Put your money in your mattress.
yeah, there you go. Scott, it is almost coming up for UFC 322, right in our neck of the woods, and the main card has been revealed over the weekend. I believe you have those fights in front of us. Could you let us know what those are?
Yeah, so obviously the 2 title fights, welterweight with Jack Della Maddalena against Islam Makhachev, and at women's flyweight, Valentina Shevchenko in that super fight against Zhang Wei Li, who we said was coming up. There's also under that, we got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales at welterweight, Bo Nichols on this one against Adolfo Vieira at middleweight, and then opening the card as it stands is Leon Edwards against Carlos Prates. That is also a welterweight fight. That's your 5, and honestly, I think they nailed it from a bout order perspective in terms of the bantam, in terms of the main card thing here. Four biggest fights are on this portion of the card, which is what you really ought to see in my mind. In my mind, a lot of time, and then Bo Nickel, he's got too much star power, I think, for him to be on this card to be down on the prelims. There's not a fight where I would say he has to go above it star power wise. He's still very intriguing to people. So he earned a place on this pay-per-view portion as well. I love that they have as the curtain jerker, or not the curtain jerker, but the feature prelim,
Yes.
Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint Denis. This is a more important fight, 100%, than Bo Nickel and Rodolfo Vieira. But this is the type of fight that the UFC used to really think of as like maybe it'll ignite some pay-per-view buys last minute. People are going to get so excited watching it on free TV or on whatever it is ESPN Plus. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on ESPN proper. I don't remember, but or FX. It's been on FX lately, right? If they can, if they can squeeze a couple more buys out of it, because people are excited off of this fight, that's what I could see happening here in this one of these last pay-per-views before the new world order on Paramount Plus. I think it's a good order. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think I was a little conflicted on whether or not Benoit and Beneil is like such a good fight. I was like, oh God, like how could that not be on the main card? But like
Because
you
it's
said,
still serving a purpose.
it
Yeah.
is serving a purpose, and I think that your explanation that makes a lot of sense. But really, really excited for UFC 322, and we'll have some good content for you guys, no doubt. And I really hope you guys checked out the interview that Scott did with Aaron Blanchfield and Fatima Klein. I thought it was really interesting having two of them at the same time. So
We had a good sit down. If you haven't watched it, we spoke for about 25, 30 minutes and hopefully you learned something about these fighters and these individuals, their friendship, the fact that they're fighting on the same card, that they're locals, that they're coming into very interesting circumstances in and of themselves in their careers, their young careers that are really starting to take off. So yeah, I hope you check it out.
absolutely. And Scott, with that, why don't you take it away for quick hits?
Yeah, so I'm going to try and limit this a little bit here. We got Larissa Pacheco. She is now a free agent after parting ways with the PFL. She has made it clear she wants to return to the UFC, where she fought very early in her career. Despite mainly fighting above 135 pounds over these last bunch of years, they don't do that anymore in the UFC, so I'm curious to see how that plays out. I've got one more UFC 322 bout that we learned about in the last week or so. Pat Sabatini versus Chepe Mariscal. That's a featherweight matchup that's being reported by multiple outlets. Unfortunate news for Jake Matthews in his appeal after there was that unfortunate non-stoppage circumstances against Neil Magny in Perth, Australia, back in September. His appeal was denied. So no retribution for Jake Matthews here. And the lastly, unfortunate news for someone who otherwise has a lot to celebrate, Walter Walker, who just won his fourth consecutive heel hook in the UFC, which is amazing but true. I don't know how this is actually a thing. He's every UFC win that he has, he's 4-1, is a heel hook. They're all in a row. Wild. But he broke his fibula in that fight at UFC 321. Of course, the victory over Louis Sutherland. So very ironic that he fractured a leg in doing a move that affects someone else's leg.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
I'm not sure Isaac Newton was a big fight fan, though.
No, I don't think he was. Who knows? I mean, I'll do some research and get back to you on that one.
But yeah, we'll read some history books.
Exactly. Alrighty. With that, let's get into the final round. Scott, I did my homework this week. We got Miguel Torres versus Takeya Mizugaki, and this was for the WEC bantamweight title. Great
Which
fight.
at the time was pretty much the most prestigious bantamweight title that we had.
This was before it was bought by the UFC, or maybe it was.
No, the UFC owned WEC at this point. The long story short, they purchased WEC in about 2006, 2007, and that was so that they could have a TV foothold on what was then known as the Versus Network, and that prevented other, I believe it was IFL, from getting over to there and having a TV deal. So they had two operations that they were running separately so that they could kind of just keep the TV market separate. That was at least all the talk and everything like that. Don't put me on
UFC.
trial for that kind of thing. But and look, they ended up buying for themselves an incredible host of lighter weight classes, which you've now come to love. But anyway, so that's your setup. So this fight, though, I want to know what you thought.
It was fantastic. There was something happening literally all the time. Like they were just always going after one another. Torres, I really liked what the commentator said. I can't remember who was sitting at the booth.
Was it Frank Mir?
Was he saying it was about him having his mouth closed? He was like, he's not even mouth breathing. Like, and we're at the end of the
I don't
first
remember.
round.
I can't remember that particular line.
It
I don't
was, yeah.
remember. I watched my homework 2 weeks ago, so I
Okay,
kind
fair
of
enough,
forget
fair
the
enough.
line a little bit.
It was a great observation because I didn't notice it. He was like, Miguel Torres is mouth breathing at the end of this round, which is like a crazy round. There's a lot of output, and he was, or not mouth breathing, rather. He was just like nose breathing the entire time, which you would
Mm.
know if you're doing any sort of physical activity. You know, he's in like zone 2 the whole time. It's ridiculous. Meanwhile, Takea, he was, you know, I think he put up a good fight, but my gosh, it was just a good 5-round fight. In terms of fights that
This
go
was
to
a really good
decision.
representation of Miguel Torres. So if you
Yeah,
liked what you had of Miguel Torres, you should go find more Miguel Torres.
yeah, absolutely. And so with that, what do we have for our next homework assignment?
Your next homework is possibly I believe at the time it was the biggest fight in UFC history, and I mean that in terms of quantifiable and qualifiable ways. Chuck Liddell against Tito Ortiz, the second time they fought. That was a pay-per-view at the closeout 2006. It was so big that my college professor in my mass comm class was talking about it in class, like, I can't wait for this fight. And so this was even before I was really watching fights. It was starting to get on my radar at this point. This was a fight that I was kind of like, oh, interesting. I guess it's a big deal.
Oh wow,
And it was.
I love it. I mean, yeah, and these guys are two of the like OGs at light heavyweight. Like if I think of OG light heavyweight, I think Chuck is probably the first person that comes to mind.
This is Chuck at the height of his powers too. Like this was him as the box office draw of the UFC at a time where the box office was starting to take off through the roof before Brock Lesnar took it to a no level with his own box office draw that he brought in with him.
100%. And then Tito, I don't know if I've actually watched a full Tito or Ortiz fight, so this is gonna be a fun one. I
There you
appreciate
go.
this one. Alrighty, and what happened this week in MMA, and we'll get to our one more fight.
50 years ago tomorrow on Halloween, Keith Jardine was born. Happy almost 50th birthday to Keith, the Dean of Mean Jardine, who was another OG who has a victory over Chuck Liddell. I should mind you, that was a surprising one. Nobody really saw that coming. That caught a lot of people by surprise. So happy birthday to him. He's doing very well, as I understand it, in Hollywood. He's an actor. I think he was doing the stuntman route, and then he actually moved into acting, and he's doing very well. So again, happy 50th to one of the most fun fighters that I enjoyed watching at the time when I was getting into the sport, Keith Jardine.
I have to do some more homework on Keith Jardine, but happy birthday,
He's
sir.
fun.
Yeah. Alrighty, and then what is our one more fight? If people have one more fight that they're able to catch this weekend, what do you got?
I'll give you one more fight, and that is at Ryzen Landmark 12, which, according to their website, Ryzen.tv, begins Sunday Eastern Time, 11 p.m. This is in Japan. And the fight in particular, this is not the main event. They don't really have it structured as the main event, but this is the number one atom weight fighter in the world. Seika Izawa is defending her atom weight title against Saori Oshima. That is a fight to watch if you care about the world structure of women's MMA in particular. This is a literal number one fighter in the world in her weight class.
All right. There we go, Scott. I might have to watch that one now. Although
I think so.
Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern, it's a little late, but you know what? You're selling it for me.
Are you a casual
No,
or are
no,
you a
no,
diehard?
I'm not. I watch all the Ryzen fights now. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining me. I feel like we got a lot off of our chest. This was a therapeutic session for us, which is nice. So,
Well, we should be certainly hopeful. Positive vibes to Tom Aspinall. Hope he can get back his vision as best as normal as possible. Have that normal life with his family and everything like that, and then resume fighting for us too, and for our entertainment and for his
love of the game.
enriching his family.
Yes,
No,
that
enriching his
too.
family. He needs to make money for the family.
That is true. He does need to do that. Alrighty, Scott, it's been a pleasure. I will see you next week when Eric rejoins us. And yeah, have a good
Maybe.
one. Yes, maybe. We'll see. Alrighty.
Take care, everybody.
Adios.